Welcome back to another episode of Beauty Lies podcast with me, Miriam Rose. And today, again, we are joined by another amazing lady, Sharon. But again, I'll let her introduce herself and we can get on with the many discussions, the many topics that we have. So, welcome, Sharon. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much, Miriam. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, you can tell us a bit about yourself,
Mhm.
your maybe family, school, career, anything you wish to share.
Okay, so I think I'll start with like the more serious introduction. So my name is Sharon Ogugu, and I am the founder of Start, which is a health coaching. I was going to say enterprise, but it's business, yes, but it's a practice. Let's call it a practice. So health coaching practice, which is just a fancy way of saying I help people figure out how to build healthy habits. My background is in nutrition. And so the focus is mostly on the nutrition bit, like, sitting down with you to come up with a personalized menu based on your budget, your dietary needs, what your goals are, etc. So hence health coach. And I'll break that down a little maybe later to explain why I realized I couldn't just focus on the nutrition bit because there were other factors coming into play. And then I'm also almost officially a public health practitioner.
Yay.
Thank you.
Yeah, do that thesis.
Yeah, this thesis is finishing. I feel like everyone who knows me now knows that I am working on my thesis, and it has taken over my life really, which is a good and bad thing, I guess. It's a double-edged sword. I'm writing about something I really, really care about, but it's also it is all consuming. Yes.
I bet. In fact, you've just reminded me of why I never did in law school. There was it a dissertation?
Most people call it that, yes.
But I love myself. I know I love myself because I could not. And I used to laugh at my friends so much because that thing is hard. Why would you take yourself through something voluntarily? Because it wasn't compulsory. So I feel your pain.
Yeah.
I wish you all the best.
I mean, unfortunately, very many good things, or at the end, like how we talk about a pot of gold at the end of a rainbow.
It's in the
It's very,
library.
yeah, I know. But a lot of good things happen to be at the end of a difficult journey.
That's true.
Look at me sounding all wise. So, anyways, and it's something we've talked about hard things today, and something I learned in my first cycle of what I call therapy or mental health work was staying the same is hard. And this is, I'm quoting Rose Misati. She's the one who took me through the program. And so she said, staying the same is hard. Changing is hard. Choose your hard.
Yeah, agree
So
with her.
yeah, so like and I tell my people, if you're unhappy enough about how things are right now, you will put in the effort. Now that doesn't mean you will always be consistent every single day. Yeah, we hear consistency is key, and it is, but it's also important to afford yourself grace. If you took 35, 40 years to pick this habit or to learn how to eat a certain way or to develop poor sleeping habits or just not have a relationship with water, or drinking it, that is, then it's not going to change in a week or two. Afford yourself some grace, and figure out why. Always ask yourself, why is this so difficult for me? And sometimes getting to the nth why helps you realize it's not as easy as you might think it to be. It may not be as straightforward. Many people think everything is just a straight line. Sometimes it's just coiled up in some core memory, some experience you've not unearthed, or something you grew up hearing, or something you've observed and you've internalized as, or that story is also going to be my story.
Yeah. And speaking of that, the one thing that stood out for me initially, and even when we were talking, was the patterns and habits that you pick up in relation to food that inform our food habits. I call it food psychology.
Yes.
So can you please share a bit about that? I find that so fascinating.
It is fascinating because I remember when I spoke to the dean at my school, so he has specialized in like mental health issues and mental health. And I was describing to him how I practice nutrition, and he looks at me and he says, Sharon, you practice food psychology. And I was like, yes, validation. Yes, because I told him that I like to delve into the why. So one of the first why questions I ask a client or potential client, actually it's usually a client because we've had the discovery session, we've decided we're moving forward together, is why are you here? Why did you think to call me? Or why did you reach out? Or what's, your chief motivation? It doesn't have to be anything fancy or elaborate. Even an answer as simple as, look, there's a dress I used to fit into and I just want to fit into that dress again. Or there's a size when I was a particular size, I was happy, and so you've associated those two so strongly that you feel you'll get back to happiness when you're that size. And so yeah, I let people come with their own reasons, right? So I'll start at infancy. Every time I hear people say I'm an emotional eater, without failing, in my head I'm like, and who is not? Who isn't an emotional eater? When an infant cries, for whatever reason, what do most mothers do? At least the ones we have grown up around.
The circle.
Put the baby at the breast to nurse when they're at the clinic getting their shots, the immunization shots, and they're screaming, and we don't want the entire queue of babies to start screaming. We tell them, put your baby at the breast, like, nyonyesha mtoto, let the baby feed. So, and I remember this distinctly from home science, because I took home science in high school, that breastfeeding is also, other than a form of sustenance for the infant, that it is also a way for mother and child to bond, which is why let's say, look at your baby, look them in the eye. That's when you notice certain things. And we used to tell moms this when I was practicing clinical nutrition. Look at your baby, then you'll notice if there's a rash on their neck. You'll notice if, they're feeding properly, if they're properly latched on and all these things. So who is not an emotional eater is a question I ask, because we did not just advocate for the feeding of infants so that they'd be fed and be full and we move on with life, even when they were sad or when they were crying, when they were unwell. It was a thing that we would tell mothers to do to comfort them. So it therefore follows suit that when you're 5 and you went to nursery school or kindergarten and you came back with an infection or, a cold or something, your caregiver, very often, say a mother, would prepare something for you that would make you feel better.
Yeah.
And even when we read books or posts from people, and now we have social media, so we get to experience other people's experiences. They talk about, my grandma used to make me this soup when I was unwell, or my mom used to make me this dish, and I still make it whenever I'm feeling sick. Are you seeing that that's just all you're hearing is this emotional connection? You're transporting yourself back to that. And even in real estate, when people are selling houses, I have read somewhere that they will make sure there's a homely feel and smell in the house, which is why they do, they place cookies somewhere so that you're transported to, interestingly, so that you're transported to that homely, so-and-so used to bake cookies growing up, grandma or mom, my aunt, if you grew up in a family of bakers, but that there's a homely, like baked goods have this very homely smell. And I think even our supermarkets, you walk into a supermarket, you're like, there's something very homely about that smell.
Makes sense.
So it's you appealing to the psychology, the psyche of a person. You're sort of trying to make them look at this as not just a piece of real estate or property, but to start picturing themselves there, baking, cooking, sustaining their children, etc. So I find that to be very interesting. Now, we've talked about that in childhood. Now, I feel like most of us after COVID have some understanding of psychology because there are all these people sharing their information online, and actual psychologists and psychiatrists. We hear a lot about trauma and whatnot. One of the things that I find very interesting is whenever I see someone resisting or fighting or holding on to something, any intense emotions, whenever we're having, a session, I ask myself, where is this rooted in? So Esther Perel, famed psychologist, likes to ask the question, where did you learn that?
Give us an example of something that has happened in the office where someone was holding on to something.
So, for instance, I remember this one is literally at the front of my at the fore of my mind. We were having a discussion with someone about their menu. I was like, okay, let's keep it varied, and they just wanted to list all the meats, but there was no room for like legumes or grains or whatever. In spite of the conversation, it was more of a monologue where I felt like I had lectured them on the importance of soluble fiber, which is found in legumes, such as beans and lentils. And so this person was resisting. And I was like, but she's a woman. Like, she knows. And I'd even given options like, if you don't like the red beans because you feel like you're gassy, even after you've soaked them, you could try yellow beans, which tend to be tolerated better, and white beans, etc. And she was just not budging. And then I was like, what's your issue with beans? She's like, I ate them. I ate too many of them. I ate every variety. And she went into this, I'm not, it's kind of a tirade. And she's like, I ate them. We ate green grams. And like we didn't have anything at the time. So you're going to tell me after I have left the village and come to Nairobi that you want me to eat beans? And I was like, oh, how very telling. But I also could feel their frustration with, why are you taking me back to that very difficult time? And that's how I was able to empathize and say, okay, I hear you. I really do. I mean, I ate a lot of beans because my late grandfather had diabetes, and we knew that beans would keep him full for longer. There was brown rice and brown ugali growing up at home. Can't stand brown ugali, but so I told her I do empathize with you so far. Then I said, "You're a mother, right?" "Yes." "Like, do your kids like beans?" She paused, and and she said, "I mean, I don't know." And I'm like, "So you haven't given them the chance to experience beans for themselves? Like, how fair is that?"
Wow.
I said, "You see, the same way you've experienced life for yourself and you're building a life for your kids so that they can have choice." That's essentially why our parents push us to stable jobs. It's so that you can have choice. Go to school so you can have choice.
Yeah.
Get as far as you can in your education, or as much experience in the workplace so you have choice. So they mean it well. They may not phrase it the way we want to hear it, but their intentions are good. So I could see that experience had shaped the way she looked at this one particular type of food, and she resisted because it was tied to a difficult time. And she wasn't the only one. I've heard of people who said, this one particular one that also stayed with me was, when my dad's health deteriorated, all we could afford was this type of vegetable because it was what was available in the market. And it grew wild. And so that's all we ate for the longest time. And she said, even when I smell it, I feel sick. I'm literally transported back to that time. So the same way the cookies will transport you to that time, so and so used to bake cookies. For someone else, the smell of something will literally make them sick. I have seen someone throw up when they smelled boiling lentils. They're just like, I cannot stand them. And for some, it's when I was pregnant, there was this, something was happening at this time that was difficult, and lentils were boiled at around that time, and it just stayed with them. And sometimes it's very unconscious until you push a little, and then they go like, oh, wait, this is why.
Can that effect be reversed? Because all the foods you're mentioning sound to be very healthy foods. And I can start understanding why now, despite all you nutritionists and doctors telling us to eat healthy, people still surprise me by not eating healthy. So is this something that can be reversed? Are those effects something, the habits and patterns, something that can be reversed?
Yes, with work. So you remember what we said about doing hard things? Whenever, this is a thing that is beautiful about the human brain. It's called neuroelasticity. We can continue to learn until the last of our days. So even if you're 90 and you live to be 90 or 95 or 105, you can actually learn new things. And I tell people, the way we like to go back to childhood, even in psychology, take a little at a time. So, for instance, there are people who've gone back to eating these legumes because they really like meat. And I say, okay, mix them in with some meat, or just have a small portion with your meat. And I tell them I don't deal in absolutes. This is, for me, this isn't a physics experiment where things have to be just so. It's, if you're not willing to let go of the meat, but you're willing to try the beans or the legumes. I mean, the green grams or the red lentils or the yellow dal, which most people are willing to try because it doesn't make them as gassy. And, it's such a nondescript legume because not very many people say they grew up eating yellow dal unless they're from a certain culture, mostly Indian or Asian, yes. So for my clients, especially like the Kenyans or the African clients, I'll tell them, would you be open to an invitation is always better than telling or recommendation or prescribing. You need to. People respond better to a suggestion, a gentle, could you, as much as they're paying you to do this, like if you just gently suggest, and also just be ready for a no. And sometimes they'll say no, and then they'll be at a function, and then they'll see these beans and they look nice, and they'll try them, and then they're like, we went home and I was gassy, but like I tried them, and they feel good because there's that sense of accomplishment. So what emotion is tied to it? Also, remember that for many people, and this one makes me happy, sad at the same time. For many people who say, for instance, that they don't like githeri, that mix of maize and beans, or people who say they don't like cabbage, you're smiling because
Because I am
boarding
those
school.
people.
Boarding school. There are people who said,
Everything.
the day I leave this
Yeah.
wall or this hedge, like when I am not in the confines of this institution, I will not so much as look at.
That was me.
I was the one of those people as well. I was like, cabbage, me. Could not be found dead. Cabbage. Then one day I was living in Kajiado doing my attachment, and I was like, I went to buy veggies and they were the only ones available. I was like, I can't eat rice and beans anymore without like any veggies. I didn't have like the traditional vegetables I'd grown up around with, and we didn't have the drying option. I did not know about that then. So I thought, you like tomatoes. So this is the same concept of mixing, yeah? Let's see. Okay, tomatoes, I like garlic. Garlic can probably take away that smell. For me, it was the smell because I felt like I could smell it all the way inside my head. And I made cabbage with lots of tomato and some grated garlic that I had fried in a bit of oil so that it would just like impart some flavor. And it was not so bad. It was not as
Yeah.
bad as I remembered it to be. And I was like, Sharon, they boiled those things to death
Yeah.
back in the day, you know, like this big pot.
Yes.
Looked like a cauldron where they were
Yeah.
mixing a spell. But yeah, that's how I felt at the time as
I
a
mean, they
teenager.
could have been. For all
Yeah,
we
yeah, for
know.
all we know, you know. And then this meat was also so overcooked that it was falling apart. So, like, I just did not like that mixture at all. But I did try it. And then that's a concept that I also started to teach my classes. Like, what if you try this with something else? Or, and this is an interesting one, eating in good company. Sometimes people are willing to try something at a family function or at a wedding than as opposed to when they're home alone. Because just that, the extra flood of feel-good hormones from laughing and being in the company of the people we care about, the people we love, or if it's a workplace that you enjoy being in, there are people who are like, somehow this cabbage can go down when I'm at the office with my office bestie, you know. So I tell
Emotions are
people,
very strong.
emotions are incredibly powerful. And that's why when I hear, again, when people say that they're emotional eaters, I'm like, we all are. And you'll be surprised
see.
how when you tap into it and then now just try and tilt it using the fact that our brains can rewire. And rewiring is not easy because it's like you walked along one path for the longest time. Imagine a field of grass, and that's how a path is formed. Now you're creating a different path. And then instead of looking at it as I am, even the language we use, I am breaking a bad habit. The idea of breaking involves hardness also. What if we said, or some level of difficulty? What if you said, I want to try something new? Trying something new has this sense of adventure, you know? So even the way we phrase things and the language that we use is very powerful, and also how we talk to ourselves and others.
Yeah.
Very many people will also struggle if, and children in particular, if there's a parent in the house who's like, could never be me to eat. There's no way this child will have any positive association with something that you're criticizing, especially because many children, let's not say many, all children, do what? They model themselves after the adults they look up to. So if you're sat at the dinner table criticizing what has been cooked like this, why does this have this? I remember a child literally saying, I don't like cake with raisins because they'd heard the dad say that.
Wow.
So, and they had no problem with it. It's just the day dad said it.
That's true.
Daddy's little boy was like, I'm not going to eat cake with raisins. I guess it's a thing we don't do
Yeah.
anymore. So it's
You're taking me back to so many dinners. There's so many things now that are making sense
that
to
now
me.
coming back to
Because I
you.
thought it's so easy to demonize someone without actually seeing the backstory, and you're helping me understand that. So interesting.
Exactly.
And also how we had compartmentalized emotional eaters, because we had put them on that corner.
Yeah, you guys are there,
Yeah.
and then the rest of us. Or us, you know, you don't understand. I am an emotional eater, you know.
That's
And
true.
then, and I'm not saying that there are no strong emotions attached to eating. I mean, that's exactly the opposite of what I'm saying. But there are people who have stronger emotions. There are people whose experiences have been even more traumatic, you know, or they've experienced a certain level of difficulty fairly consistently. It's the same way we say you can go through a depressive episode, and then there's the kind of depression that you have for years and years and years, which is clinical depression, you know, where you're fighting for your life every day. So people's levels of struggle are different, but then we don't also minimize them. I'm not going to say just because yours is a paper cut, it's not pain, as opposed to, you know, someone else getting like their finger actually pierced through. It's important to just pay attention to both. I'll probably take a shorter time dealing with you as opposed to this injury as opposed to the other, but they're both injuries and they both require attention.
This is so interesting that that what I'm getting from you is that even those ones, the ones who have identified as emotional eaters, can be helped as well,
Yeah.
because it's a matter of rewiring their brains and getting them out of that hole. Because it doesn't sound healthy. Like none of even the paper cut or even the burger. I feel like we need to have freedom around food.
Exactly. We do need to be a lot less judgmental than we are. And unfortunately, many of the standards for health we have used, whether it is in healthcare itself, as nutritionists or with doctors, because we tend to work closely with them, tend to be borrowed. We got the BMI, body mass index system, from elsewhere. We got the food pyramid from the US, from the FDA. And it's then ironically, then they went through their shifts, and by the time those shifts were communicated back to the rest of the world, when did we factor in our own foods or how we eat and how we eat for what we do? It made sense for our, let's say, great-grandparents, because I know our grandparents were also civil servants, so our great-grandparents to eat the way they did, and especially those heavy meals before going to the farm, before going to fetch water, before doing all these things. They needed calorie-dense foods. They needed the potatoes and whatnot.
Yeah.
And now I hear a lot of people say, oh my goodness, it irks me when I hear people say, but this fruit has too much sugar. And I'm like, it's not just sugar. It's not syrup. It comes wrapped with other things. There are other micronutrients. And I think even the way we approach educating people on health tends to be very fear-based as well. Sometimes it's informed by what is mainstream. I can't tell you how many times I've had the phrase keto diet, even in the past few weeks, because people have just decided the entire food group that is carbohydrates is evil. This week alone, I have had someone say, no, grains are bad. Like, I'm like which ones? Like, yeah, like ugali, like rice. I'm like, so then why do we have the China study indicating people are quite healthy in Asia with their rice eating and their noodle
was
eating?
wondering that the
The
other
people
day.
who live the longest. And you see, this isn't just longevity, how long you live. That's a factor. But it's also how long you live and the quality of life. And some of the people who've been interviewed in these Asian communities, their mental faculties are pretty intact. Their level of motility, they're not, bent over with some form of arthritis or osteoporosis or osteomalacia and all these illnesses of the aged, or the ones that tend to increase with risk factors that increase with age. And, the heart disease and the cancers are low occurring in these communities where rice has been the staple for centuries. So where are we really getting this information from?
Is it because we took from FDA and the West? We just took everything
We just took
wholesome
it.
and superimposed it on ourselves without giving it a second thought. Is that do you think that's a problem? And that goes even to our hospitals.
Well, I believe it is. Because in the past month, 2 months, I've looked at some of the menus, actually more than 2 months from late last year. I've looked at some of the menus that clients have gotten from hospital settings that have made them worse. I literally had a patient tell me that her blood sugars had not been so bad as after she had seen this nutritionist who'd given her a menu that was a lot of processed food, and she's not a processed food eater, per se. She's the person who has her own compound where she grows her own vegetables, and she's able to get her arrowroots and sweet potatoes from close to the market. She's had diabetes for years. And so she was able to keep her sugars well within range for very many years until this
The
time.
hospital.
Yes. And now she was in hospital treating something completely different. But
They spotted it.
everything else went south. Her blood pressure spiked, her blood sugar went up. And I told her, you know what? Go back to your old way of eating. And she was relieved, because you see, there's also, when we're looking at how people eat, and this is something I remember we discussed, we really need to factor in what they have access to.
Yes.
And access is, what do they have available in their market? What are they able to access financially? And one of the questions I like to ask people is, what's your budget for food? What would be a comfortable amount? Like, our economy is a mess right now, and people are struggling to put food on their tables. Now imagine going to hospital to seek help. Because by the time you're going to hospital, you're going to seek help. You're unwell, and you're already vulnerable, you're scared. And out-of-pocket spending is high. People are trying to figure out, not everyone, insurance coverage is not as high as
not
we'd like it to
universal.
be.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so you're already in a vulnerable state. Now, for someone to literally give you a menu that's going to break the bank and you're barely able to make ends meet, I personally call that unethical. We need to, as healthcare professionals, make that extra effort to meet people where they're at. Secondly, I'm not going to tell an elderly couple, and this actually happened, from a village in Kilifi County to take cranberry juice. I think I'm saying this, that if she's somewhere, he or she is somewhere out there, they can call themselves to a meeting and ask, like, why would you do that? Because first of all, it's not even the protocol to recommend juice for someone whose blood sugars are out of control.
I mean, if they're telling you not to take an apple, cranberry should be out of the question.
Or if they're telling you if you're taking, a sweet fruit, it has to be a slice and a small slice. So, they're telling you about glycemic index, which tells me this wasn't something that was thought through. And I've been told by some people that they suspect their menus are AI generated or whatever. I will not blame AI. I don't know. Cannot speak to what I don't know. But what I do know is sometimes even the client themselves or the patient themselves will look at this menu and go like, no, this isn't right. And I personally believe that, I don't just believe, it's a fact. Your healthcare provider is a service provider, right? If you're not happy with your internet and you've paid someone for internet access and you're choking up your bandwidth with not downloading large videos but just basic work, you call them and you inform them that you're not happy with the services, or like they need to fix whatever is happening, and if you're not satisfied, you move to another service provider, right? The unfortunate thing is, by the time you're moving from one doctor to another, one nutritionist to another, that's money you're leaving behind because you've paid a consultation fee. So for me, it's literally a call to action for our healthcare providers to just, I don't like using this phrase, imagine if this were your mother, your sister, this is a human being. I did not swear an oath to do no harm, the Hippocratic Oath. I did not, because that's for the doctors. But I got into healthcare because I knew what it was like to live with a patient and I wanted what was best for them. And so I use some of that fire to keep me serving my patients to the best of my ability. And even when I feel like I have hit a bump, I ask for a second opinion, which is why I have a team around me. And then there are things I've realized I can't do. Sometimes I work with someone and I realize we're really not making progress. And then I speak with someone else in healthcare and they're like, are you sure this is within your scope? And then I probably have to refer them to, a psychiatrist or a psychologist to just discuss this further, or I'm not the best fit for them, and it takes a lot of humility to also get to a place where you're not able to accept when you're not able to help someone, or when you feel like you're not making any real progress, and to hand them over to someone and tell them, look, it's almost like a breakup. It's not me, it's you, it's not you, it's me. But to literally sit them down and tell them, I'm concerned that we are not making the progress I thought we would make, and I feel like we need to do something else. And sometimes it has been, they were on some medication they didn't say, they didn't talk about, or they didn't disclose, or we were just not a good fit and they went and worked with someone else and they did incredibly well. And they came back and told me, hey, guess what? I worked with someone else, or I finally started going to the gym and my fitness trainer just helped me figure something out. And then that works for them.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is us, the people who are on the receiving end, exercising our choices and our options. And until I spoke to you, I never thought that I could fire my doctor. Thank God I don't have a doctor. I don't like hospitals, but you know what I mean?
Yes.
That I can just choose regardless. Because ultimately, even if I pay a consultation fee, ultimately my health in the wrong hands is more expensive in the long run. So that's something that I had never thought about, and I'm glad you've mentioned it. People just getting out of this socialization of doctors are up there and us we're over here and we are at their mercy. Which brings me to the other question of, then should we boycott hospitals and go to Mitishamba people?
Oh, goodness.
What's your take on that?
No. I'm very big on balance. And that is why, for instance, one of my professors recently, we were catching up on a unit I need to finish up with. And one of the things she requested was, Sharon, please, I hope you're not telling like patients to like boycott. That was the insinuation. And I laughed and I said, no, 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 no. I would not recommend that. Even when I'm working with patients who are on medication, I have never told them, stop taking this medication. That's a discussion that they need to have with their doctor.
Yeah.
However, if they notice that the medication is causing them harm, or there are just certain side effects that are causing them to be uncomfortable, it's affecting their quality of life. If there's anything I would stress to anyone seeing a doctor, especially managing a condition, and especially managing it long term, short term, but managing a condition, I'm big on getting second opinions. I'm very big on getting second opinions, because I also believe in, like, we are all in this learning, growing together. So why would I take the risk of assuming that I know everything?
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's, what they call the differential diagnosis. When you're all shooting ideas across the room is when you realize, wait, this could be it. You get to the solution when you work as a team. And that's why healthcare comes in a team. There's no one person who will do everything. So there's that. I do not advocate for generally anything that's not regulated. And I'm not even saying that I haven't tried it. My grandmother has brought me herbs to deal with menstrual cramps. Because they were from my grandmother, I did take them. I did.
Oh, did they help?
Yeah, they did.
Because one of my cleaners, I have really terrible cramps. And she was like, oh, you poor girl, I'm going to bring you some mitishambas that we use in Luyaland.
Yes.
And I promise you they're going to help. And I cannot wait for her to
You
take
can,
them.
right? Because also it's
nothing
relief.
else. It's relief. I don't like medicine. So if something is going to give me relief, I'll take it.
And
it is unregulated, but maybe their grandmother.
That's exactly. That's exactly the issue there, what you've mentioned, regulation. So you see, I mean, I hear people say, oh, yeah, yes, you should take CMOS or this, that, and the other to help with this, that, and the other issue. And I'm not even mentioning CMOS to offend anyone. I'm just saying, like, whatever range of products. Yeah? Now, by the time we came to appeal, that had gone through testing, that had gone through, so that we know when you see your medication and it says do not take more than X number of tablets in X number of hours, it's because they've gone through a testing phase. The problem with this leaf is that you do not know how much of this ingredient that you're looking for, whatever causes the pain relief, you don't know how much of it is contained in this leaf. You do not know how much you should be taking. And you do not know how it affects everything it's coming across as it gets out of your system. So sometimes you come to discover very late that you are harming your liver, where stuff goes through, our medication goes there, it's broken down to the individual components that now get absorbed into the bloodstream to do the work that it needs to do. So even when you look at like your painkillers, you'll see there's caffeine, there's aspirin, there's this and that, and each of them has its function. And then we also have the kidneys, which also bear the brunt when it comes to just taking things unregulated. So one of the things I tell people is I would personally not tell you stop taking medication, start taking this. I don't do that. And whenever you have issues with whenever we're having a conversation around medication, I always involve the doctor. I have actually attended doctor's visits with a patient and where we have a discussion and we are working as a team. And I'm telling them, okay, on the nutrition aspect, this is what we are doing. And then I'll even invite them to look at the menu and I'll even justify. Sometimes they even ask you to, why is this here and why aren't there any, I thought peppers are healthy. I'm like, no, sometimes in some people, peppers aggravate their blood sugars for whatever unknown reason. But like we have an actual discussion. That also increases the confidence of the patient. So I'm not saying I do take guava leaf tea when I have menstrual cramps. I have taken womb tea to help me with, the symptoms of fibroids and all that. But I also do it with caution. And it's not something that I go dishing out and telling people, oh, you know what, you should take this, or maybe you should try that. I do allow for people to share from their lived experience because it's their lived experience. And sometimes they'll tell me this worked for me. And someone else will come and ask me, wait, do you know anyone who's taken thing X? I know a person for whom it's worked, or I haven't heard of any bad reports. But I also tell them, caveat, we may not know the consequences of having taken this short term or long term, sometimes until it's too late. And since Not all of us have that tendency to go for annual checkups to see that everything is working okay, especially our internal organs. I wouldn't just give a blanket recommendation for taking traditional medication.
Mitishamba.
Yeah. I'm not saying I have a problem with it, and I will be honest and say I have taken some, but then I always take it with this small voice at the back of my head saying, how is this affecting everything else? Do you know what it's doing to your kidneys or your liver or, your stomach lining, whatever, your gut itself? And sometimes you will feel it. There are people who tend to think that a running stomach is indicative of all the toxins leaving the body. No, no. There is, we also need to just also, well, listen to our bodies, yes, but also take precautions. Yes.
Wait, so when you are what's being gotten rid of?
Oh, when your stomach is running or when you're vomiting, it is your body attempting to eject whatever you have consumed that is problematic. So food poisoning is essentially your body saying you took something, it has this bacteria, it's messing with us, and we are getting it out of the system. That's the body's response. Like a fever is the body's attempt to surround this toxic substance and get rid of it. And just it's your body fighting, because we have the soldiers, our white blood cells that are fighting to restore normalcy and everything, and to eject whatever is causing the illness. So there is that. However, if it is induced by something you've consumed, there are cultures that have actually taught that, like, oh, if you're taking something and then you have a running stomach, then it means it's cleansing you. I would worry about your electrolytes, because dehydration does kill, and especially with young kids and older folks. That is how cholera kills people. Eventually, you become so dehydrated that, you die. So I would also tell people to check that. Like, if your body has that is also an adverse reaction to something. Watch out for what you're taking and how it affects you. The same way, if you're to take just any normal thing and you have swelling, it's your body reacting and telling you, I don't like this. So what I'm basically stressing here is be on the lookout. If you see something that's off, don't tell yourself, I am detoxing. The liver detoxifies for us. We do not need to further help it in this process. So I am phrases I keep hearing, balancing my hormones. How do you know? Do you do the before, then take the thing, then after the test? Or so how do you know your hormones are balanced? Like, there are things we also need to question, like this language that we're using, where did we get it from, and what does it really mean? Do we understand what we mean when we say detoxification or balancing of hormones, and which hormones?
Yeah. I think we see it on WebMed.
Wait, look, Dr. Google has been asked all sorts. I tell people sometimes you feel worse when you look at doctor. See an actual doctor, see an actual nutritionist.
Speaking of dehydration, can you tell us a bit about water? Because I have two conflicting opinions, that you should take water as much as possible, or you should take water only when you're thirsty, because your body knows when it needs water. So
Okay.
you take it when you're thirsty. Another opinion is take it with salt.
Okay. Let me start with the last one. You don't necessarily have to take water with salt. Like, okay, so there are people who do have a problem with the taste of water. It's bland, it's flat, I
Some
don't
water
like
is
it.
horrible.
Yeah, depending on where you're
Nairobi
getting your water
my
from. Yeah,
God.
exactly. I remember when water was crisp from the tap.
Yes.
Very young. Now,
No, I can tell you places where
yeah,
you can get good water.
exactly.
I'm actually a water expert taster.
Oh, nice. So you'll
really
taste
can.
water and you're like,
Oh my God.
this one is too salty, or this one
Yeah,
is
or this
off.
one has passed through rocks or whatever. Yeah, like now I went to my friend's the other day and I tasted her tap water and I swear it tastes like heaven. So I just had to
Okay.
carry some.
Was it anywhere near Loy Tok Tok?
No.
The last time I had
it's-
sweet water, it was from
Oh,
Loy Tok
really?
Tok.
I
Yes.
bet that's a different kind of sweet.
Yeah.
This is in Nazareth, near Nazareth Hospital.
Ah, okay.
That side, because I think the soil is distant contact. I don't know, that water is so good.
Well, the other thing is, again, as a scientist, like, when we say sweet or it tastes good, that's very subjective.
Yeah.
The thing about water is this. Yes, we should take a certain amount of water per day. And one of the best indicators for how dehydrated or well hydrated you are is the color of your urine. So I tell people, it's a joke, but it's one they remember. If you go to the loo and your pee looks like cocoa pine or artificial orange juice, there's a problem. And especially if it also has a smell. And then there are these things that will tell you. And also if, you've not typically had a problem with body odor, but your sweat is particularly pungent, which tends to happen, say, if you went on a trip and you were not taking as much water because you were going to be on the road, etc. That's normal. But that also tells you, when I have enough water, this is how my body is functioning. This is the smell I'm letting off, etc. Even in my urine, the pee and whatnot. But ideally, we are talking about 2 liters, 2 liters, 2.5 liters. Now, there are people who take it to 4 liters, and I'm like, now you're overworking your kidneys. You really do not need to be taking that much water. But it's also within reason and balance. And again, look at how your quality of life is. If you're taking so much water that you're waking up in the middle of the night 3 to 4 times so that you're not enjoying a full night of rest and you're waking up tired, then you're overdoing it. And then take your water earlier in the day so that by the time you get in the evening, you're taking a lot less, so that again, you're having a full night of rest. The better rested you are, the better able you are to function. For people who struggle with the taste of water, and that was me for a long time, and it still is me on some days, I use non-caffeinated tea bags. So like ginger or lemon flavored, or even squeezing a bit of lemon or putting like a slice of lemon or lime in your water, or even orange. Some people like the taste of cucumber. I am not those people. But whatever it is that floats your boat, whatever makes you happy, just something to give it flavor. Why did I say non-caffeinated? Caffeine it takes a lot of water to wash out caffeine after we've taken it. So I don't want to use phrases like diuretic and antidiuretic, but it takes a lot of water to wash out caffeine from, like, once we have consumed it from the bloodstream, from the body. So you want to limit how much coffee and tea you take, because we also don't tend to count the fluids we take. Some of us wake up and hear the phrase,
I can't run my day
I
without
can't
coffee.
start my day, yes, without a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. And I ask you, if you take it out, what happens? So if you now
They get
see
headaches
exactly,
or start shaking. Like
if you start
rattles.
shaking, if you have headaches, then there's a problem there you want to replace. And now, again, I don't like using phrases like break the habit. You want to replace the coffee with something else. Why? Because wouldn't it be nice to exist without having to have a cup of coffee, or not being able to function without it? Again, just how you're phrasing it, yeah. So it's caffeine masks a lot of our fatigue. I mean, not just fatigue, but exhaustion. Sometimes you're only able to push through the day because you've had some coffee or some tea, black tea. And I tell people that's going to show up later. And sometimes not too late. If you notice that, oh, you're forgetting things, your concentration has worsened, your attention span is lower, look at your sleep. Look at your screen time as well, which is a whole other conversation, but also look at your sleep. And you'll notice, if you start working on sleeping, it's not just about being in your bed for 10 hours. It's, are you actually asleep? Because very many people will tell me, oh, I go to bed at 10 and then I'm like, okay, good. So when you get to bed, what do you do? And then they smile or look down, like, your phone, right? So, what period of time are you actually resting? Are you actually fast asleep? So those are some of the things. I know I've delved into other things outside of the water, but yeah, just water in its pure state. And then also look at the fluids. We do have water in fluids such as soups and teas, but teas without caffeine, because any tea with caffeine is drawing water out of your body anyway.
Is
It's
chai
dehydrating you.
with caffeine? Chai,
Yes.
majani chai.
Yes, which
that
is
the
why
reason-
it wakes you up when you're tired.
Is there a reason why people who don't take tea have headaches, especially our mom's age?
Or who do take tea have
Yeah, so
headaches. Yes.
wale,
Yeah.
you get a tea and you're like,
I have to, yeah, I
chai.
have a headache. And
Yeah.
even when you look at your pain meds, you'll see that there's caffeine in there. So sometimes if you have a headache, you just take a cup of tea, you feel better. So for many of our mothers, it really is dependency. You've developed this caffeine dependency. You've gotten so used to it's a part of something that you do, so that you're dependent on it. A lot like how many people say they have sugar addictions, and I'm like, is it really a sugar addiction? Well, sometimes it could be, where if you don't get the sugar, you're actually in a bad mood. You're antsy, you're unsettled. But for others, it's, I'm used to taking sugar, and our body is also working patterns. I'm used to taking tea at this time. I'm used to sleeping at this time. If you don't sleep, you start yawning. You're losing your functionality. Then if you skip that, the cycle comes in later. Same thing with tea and coffee. Even with hunger, you're hungry at a particular time. If you typically eat at a particular time, you're hungry at around that time. So it's just, I tell people, if you were taking 5 cups of tea or coffee every day, bring it down to 3, bring it down to 2. If coffee is such an integral part of how you spend your day, as long as you're not masking fatigue and whatnot, see if you can replace it with something else that doesn't have caffeine, especially the older we get, because I'm seeing more and more people also having issues with sleep.
What would the replacements for coffee, for example, or tea be that give the same kind of kick?
Oh no,
Or the taste. Some
that's the
people just
kick.
like the
Just like the
taste.
taste. We do have a variety of teas that people could try. We could try
Coffee
rooibos. We
people
could
don't
try
like tea.
coffee, and that's the thing. There are coffee drinkers and there are tea drinkers. But again, it's also, do you really want to?
That's true.
Do you really want? You see, we could have this discussion here, and you're like, you know what? I'm going to change my ways. I'm going to drop the coffee. I know it's not good for me. The same way, I have never met a smoker who doesn't know that smoking is bad for them.
Yeah.
And some of them actually in the medical field, and they're like, you know what? This thing is killing me. And yet you continue to do it. So it's not just the knowing. It's also, what does this thing do for you? Maybe you're in a high stress job and it's the thing that helps keep you afloat. And so maybe we strike a balance where we'll be honest with each other, but we'll say we move from 5 cups to maybe 2, or we take the most coffee when we are awake for shift workers, for instance. I don't know if I've met a shift worker who would give up their coffee.
I like that you're conceding to balance. I like that you have no hard and fast rules or hardline stances. That's fair.
Because life is really, there are days when you will fall asleep late and you will need the coffee to get you through the day because, say, you have a big presentation, or maybe you could not sleep well because you are anxious and you do need to be alert. And I have just come to realize that you'd rather have a person with whom you have an honest relation, like an honest conversation about things where they can come to you and tell you, look, I'm struggling with ABC, or I've gotten back on this, and you're like the, what we say, safe space, as opposed to, I am just another healthcare provider they need to pretend around because I've classed things as good behavior, bad behavior, and they think they're going through a marking scheme when they come in for a consultation. I'd rather have someone who I'm actually helping. And I'm only helping you if we're being honest with where we're at, so that I'm actually helping you or we're working together.
The other question that has been on my mind is about supplements.
Oh, yes. Oh, so many thoughts. I'll just start with a side story that's just, it's interesting because it's interesting. And an aunt of mine showed me a box or something, or a picture of a box. And she says, what do you know about these supplements? And I look, and first of all, it's not in English. And then I Google Translate, and it just read detoxifies the body. Oh,
I see
if
that
there's a phrase I can't stand, it is that one. I remember the first time I encountered that word in high school in a biology class, when we were doing this experiment where you had a piece of liver that was put in a beaker that had some hydrogen peroxide, which is H2O2. And then when the piece of liver, like biology teacher always said piece, yes. So the piece of liver is placed inside, you see bubbles, and eventually when you test it, I don't remember what we used to do with the litmus paper to ensure that it's actually water. I don't remember the test for water, but initially we tested that, yes, it was hydrogen peroxide, and now we tested and we see it's water, which is H2O, and then
O2.
oxygen was released, O2. And that's when we learned detoxification is the liver receives something and then it breaks it down to non-toxic components. That is what detoxification is. So when blanket statements are made like detoxifies the body, look, there is this thing about the human body that allows us as warm-blooded creatures to maintain a certain body temperature, for us to maintain a certain concentration of oxygen in the blood, to maintain, you see that maintenance, that existence in a state where your body temperature also doesn't go past, 36 degrees Celsius, that is balance. And if you shift, and it's homeostasis, basically, I don't like using the big words, but and there's a series of processes that take place to ensure that everything stays in balance. So if you have a fever, your temperature goes up and you will feel sick because your body will draw to your attention that something is off, you're fighting an infection. And if your stomach is running, if you feel, you hear sounds in your gut, means your gut bacteria is alive and it's doing its thing and it's trying to figure out what this food is, etc. It means that your gut is alive, because if you are comatose, then that would be a different scenario. We actually check for sounds in the gut in comatose patients. So there are those things that tell you you're alive, you're functioning, or something is wrong. We need to remedy it. And the body does have a way of, we said it has soldiers, we have white blood cells, of fighting off infection. Now, supplements, I have shifted to supplements. Is it okay?
Yes.
Supplements, as the word suggests. So you see, we've taken detoxification, because that was just a side note. Yeah, let's break down the word. Supplements is to supplement. And I don't have like the proper dictionary definition, but supplementing is there's already a supply of something. You just need to top it up. Ideally, in an ideal world, we should be getting our nutrients, whether it is our water-soluble vitamins, our fat-soluble vitamins, our minerals, our fiber, our water from food sources or water itself. Okay? So if we were to eat, any person who eats a varied diet that has all the food groups represented. I did not say some. I said all the food groups represented. So for those who are vegetarian, vegan, we do have protein options that are non-heme, like they're not from animal sources, but they're plant sources of protein, and that are superior.
You should say that louder for the people at the back,
I know
because that's the question I get
this
every damn
week.
day.
I got someone who told me we should not be on vegetarian or vegan diets because they are bad for us. And I'm like, look, we're very quick to demonize them, and we forget that health is not measured by how skinny you are. Because there are people who will eat a certain way, lots of meat and some vegetables, and then they go to hospital for a standard check and they find that their blood cholesterol is through the roof. And let's remember, strokes are silent killers. Blood pressure issues are also silent killers. These are things that even in pregnancy, 1 minute your blood pressure is through the roof, the next you're not here with us. And those are things we should not take lightly. And let's also look at how we are coating our arterial linings, like the arteries, and we do not have plant foods that give us bad cholesterol. I mean, fine, we do have palm oil and the likes, yes. But we predominantly, when we talk about like the plant sources of protein, the beans, the nuts, etc., even the ones that are high in fat, we tend to find that the fats are good. Now, there are cases where, and especially where I've dealt with people who've had inflammatory conditions, they say like coconut oil is off. There are studies that have indicated coconut oil or coconuts are high in saturated fat. But there are people who use coconuts who do not struggle with those issues, whether it's elevated heart disease, etc. So I haven't found anything that I would say is conclusive, so I can sit here and say coconuts are out. Love coconuts also, I'm biased. But I do know that when we use supplements, we're supposed to be supplementing. Now, when I was in training, I was taught that supplements are supposed to be used in cases where food could either not be consumed or was not accessible. So supplements were given, for instance, to children who are already undernourished because we need to catch them up. Supplements are given to people who, for some reason, are not eating as much as they should for their body size and body weight and, to maintain everything because they've suffered an injury. They've gone through surgery. So we are weaning them, we're getting them to eat. You've gone through chemotherapy. And all these factors put together would explain why we needed supplements. And let's also not forget that our food is not as nutritious as it used to be. There was a time when people ate what they grew from the ground. Now, our food, typically for majority of the population, has sat in a truck for a long time before it gets to the market, where it also sits out in the open or in the sun, where there are nutrients that are lost, especially these water-soluble nutrients that are easily lost because of heat. They're easily washed off. Very many of us buy vegetables that have already been cut up. And so the minute those veggies are exposed, the leaf is cut up and it's exposed, there's oxidation, which is oxygen combining with, enzymes and all these things are happening. Let's just say there are many opportunities for nutrient loss. So we can't justify the use of supplements, not as liberally though as some of us are doing it. And secondly, there's supplements where you're actually seeing things like vitamin A, B, C, D, vitamin K, etc. And there are others where you are seeing names, two scientific names or long names, not in English. And I'm not saying English is the standard of of measurement here for what is a legitimate supplement or isn't. But I get worried because this sounds a lot like sometimes the selling of snake oil, because people are desperate to be healthy. The news is flooded with lots of scary research about cancer being on the rise and type 2 diabetes getting children earlier, and blood pressure also becoming very rampant, and heart disease, diseases of the West coming. And we are getting more people getting sicker, quicker, younger. There's a lot to be afraid of. We are looking at our food, but out of that desperation and fear, we're also running to supplements without checking. One of the things that I wish we would also really, really master or normalize is reading food labels. Even when you're buying a supplement, just look at what it is that you're buying and then find out what that does for you. So you do not need to be taking copious amounts of vitamin A because you will suffer hypervitaminosis. There are certain nutrients such as fat-soluble vitamins, which are stored. You take it and it's stored and stored. And if you keep storing it in the liver, then it will actually make you sick, which is where now toxicity steps in, where you actually get sick because you have it in excess. Now, how do you avoid this? You check your labels. If you're buying supplements, you're buying it because of a particular reason. So, for instance, you're buying your omega-3 or you're taking your flax seeds and you're grinding them so that you get what is on the inside. For those who take flax seeds, yes, because you need what is on the inside the seeds. And then you're mixing it, say, with your oatmeal and you're eating it. And if you're taking your omega-3, it's because you're not getting your omega-3 from elsewhere. If you're taking your vitamin A, you need to know what foods are rich in vitamin A so that you're doing that within balance. And then I know there are people who suffer colds and flu and they're like, yeah, my immunity is bad. But then is it also because you're not sleeping very well? Is it because you're eating, lots of sugary foods? Is it like, what else could it be? Like, question, ask why, what could it be? So supplements, I do recommend, yes, but it's not as a normal, never to replace healthy food. Don't take supplements and then not take food. So for instance, every time I hear people say I take psyllium husks or whatever, and I'm like, you can't get fiber from your vegetables. And so please normalize eating the vegetables. And by the way, you will never get the full benefits from supplements as you would from eating the food. Somehow, it's just, I can't explain it, but somehow you reap the full benefits by actually eating that spinach or eating, those French beans or eating that yellow dal than you would if you were taking some supplement that was, designed to help you get those nutrients. So supplements within balance, yes, because we're not getting as many nutrients. And then also let's normalize checking to see, especially for vegetarians and vegans, your B12, because
Yeah, I actually checked. There's a time I did a check and it was fine. And I didn't take anything.
and it also is depleted over time.
Okay, I'll keep checking.
Yeah, keep checking. Like, let's normalize checking. Do it every year as far as possible. Like, the way you budget for like that holiday or when there's a safari rally and you're going, or there's a function, a food festival or concert, and you'll actually save up and commit to go. Let's also, as far as possible, commit to also checking those things. Check your hemoglobin, especially for women of reproductive age, because sometimes it goes really low and you're like, oh, I'm just tired all the time, I'm dizzy, and you realize something else is happening. The way you go for your annual checkups, HPV tests and whatnot. Normalize checking, because it's literally going to sound like I'm writing a composition. Prevention is better than cure. You'd rather find out earlier and address the issue than after it is far gone.
Yeah.
Yes.
So before we wind up and prepare for our next session, because we have hardly exhausted
Yeah.
all the things I wanted to exhaust, please tell us about, it's okay with the audio?
Yeah.
Tell us about your journey. How did you end up in nutrition?
I'll give you the short version. I wanted to do medicine. And I wanted to do medicine. I think mostly I will blame my grandfather, because I think I just grew up hearing him say that I was smart and I was going to be a doctor and I'd be his doctor. And he had type 2 diabetes. And I remember being 11, 12, and he had this wound on the bottom of his foot that wouldn't, the infection wouldn't go away, and the wound started to spread. And so I used to use the same hydrogen peroxide and betadine solution to dress him, like to clean the wound and then dress it. And I remember feeling like, it's very, I don't know, I don't like to use the word empowered because it's used a lot, but like I just felt this very energized in giving. And that's, I think, the first time I considered healthcare. And then it stayed with me. We lost him in 2005 because his kidneys got involved and he refused dialysis. He just felt he said he'd lived a full life. And I was 17 and devastated because I'd wanted to be his doctor. But then I also didn't make the grade for medicine. And my single mom was struggling. I had seen her struggle to pay my school fees. So I thought I'll fall on my sword and I'll pick something else. Until then, did not know that nutrition was a thing. And then I see these papers they give you, like these sheets of paper for revising your options when you're going to campus. Like, exactly. And I see them and I'm like, oh wait, nutrition. So I read up a bit on it. I'm like, aha. And then I started to read this book about natural remedies and how food can be healing. And I think it was Dr. Pamplona. I was like, he's a doctor, but he's talking a lot about food. And he said, this is something that Western medicine has ignored. And I found it interesting. And then I found out that certain populations lived very long because they eat a certain way. It wasn't the things I had typically thought were healthy. And, there was a lot of learning and unlearning going on. So I did pick nutrition and I enjoyed it mostly. But then towards the end, I started to feel very frustrated. And I think in hindsight, because I have had depression, I did go through a depressive episode where I had no interest in it at all because how it was taught to us and how I had practiced it in a hospital setting was very different from what I had envisioned reading Dr. Paplona's book or just dealing with my grandfather at home. And so I thought, okay, maybe I can change the world. I was young, I was energized. And so I thought, I guess I could do something different. So I did break a lot of rules when I did my attachment, by the way. I was told, don't get too attached to the patients. Did not listen because I wanted to know, what informed how they lived their lives. I wanted to ask more questions than what we were typically taught to ask them. And I think that was also my rebellious way of when I eventually became self-employed in 2018, deciding to I wanted to give myself a chance to practice nutrition the way I had always dreamed of it being practiced.
Yeah.
I had worked at a weight loss company for 2 years prior to, quitting my job. And I said, and this is also Jules says, gift of depression. She's my best friend. And one of the gifts of depression is that you always, you encounter the futility of life sometimes, especially when you're in a dark place and you realize how it could just all end. And so at that point, I said, if my life were to end, what's the thing I'd regret not doing? And I was like, yeah, never practicing nutrition the way I dreamed of doing it. And so I had a beautiful, before COVID, 2 years, 3 years of meeting people in their homes, talking to them about how they prepare their food, meeting their kids, preparing food with them, then unraveling these what we now call food stories, the stories that informed why they relate the way they do with the foods that they relate with, the ones that they have bad memories attached to, the ones they love because they're like, oh, this is when I got my first job, I could afford to buy chicken, or I could afford to buy this, so I could use this kind of spice, and now I go to that same spice shop because it transports me back, the emotions we were talking about. And I realized, okay, it's a beautiful thing to combine all the things, my love for the teaching and biology and just dealing with people one-to-one. And that was basically it. So that became interrupted when I decided to do my master's in global public health in Germany. So I was there for 2 years, 5 months, and I've been back for about 2 months now. Yeah.
Wow. But it's so natural to you. You're telling me your story, and I'm like, this sounds like it was pre-written. It was just supposed to happen this. Exactly.
I believe that as well. I've been talking a lot lately with people about dots joining and how I now see life as a series of interesting accidents and incidences as well. So just accidents. But it's also the stumbling upon things.
Yes.
Like I just did not know nutrition existed, until I did. And that the books were available in my home, in my mom's house. And she's also an avid reader. I love reading because of my mother and my late grandpa. And how, of all the books I would have read, those are the books that I read right around that time. How I decided that Kajiado would be the district hospital I would go do my volunteer work at. My second attachment at, and then also did some volunteer work and engaged with the community and realized, culture is also important when we're talking about nutrition and health, factoring in where people are from and what they have access to, what they think of as healthy, what they take pride in eating, what they learned to eat from their families. So it's been quite the journey. It's been equal parts enjoyable and also a bit frustrating when you're doing something different from everyone else's. So resistance. I've had my beefs with doctors also where I'm questioning what they're recommending or where I'm telling them, not in these exact words, stay on your lane, let me stay on mine, and then let's just get this patient to a healthy place. And of course, when you're choosing path less traveled, your parent who has struggled to help you get everything that they could possibly help you get, worries that job security, like if you're self-employed, then what happens if there are no clients and there's no cash flow? But somehow becoming self-employed is one of the best and worst decisions I made. I don't regret it because I learned to see myself in a different light. I mean, I used to say, oh, yeah, I think I'm strong, I can handle things, but now I actually genuinely believe it in my soul and spirit. And because, oh my goodness, running a business. But then also, it helped me connect with people and it helped me. There are people who told me they had hope after we'd worked together because some of them had been told by doctors, we don't know what we're going to do from here. And I said, hey, I don't have all the answers, but how about we try something? Talk to your food. You believe your food makes you sick, and you say talking is how you deal with your feelings and how you unravel things. So just talk to your food and go like, please don't make me sick. That was a patient who had ulcerative colitis. And she said she started to feel better. And then combined with going to the gym, she was like a mad woman, I talk to my food. Or people who now came up with phrases like, I share calories with friends. So because Sharon says we don't stop eating cake, we share our calories. Whenever they'd have cake, instead of shamefully hiding, they would go and share the cake with a friend. And so they would associate it with something that, was enjoyable. So just shifting how we look at things and giving people grace, a whole lot of grace.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
The one thing I think I'll take away from that last thing you said is yes, we've talked about emotional eating, emotions, but you've literally just something has just clicked for me that I could literally just insert emotion into the most mundane things.
Yes.
And I can choose which emotions, the freedom we were talking about, I can insert positivity into even cake or into even whatever.
Yeah, because very many of us
So
are taught to
interesting.
think of things as good or bad, black or white.
Exactly.
We've not really been taught that there are gray areas. And there are certain things that we thought were a certain way when we were younger. And we grew and we realized it's not as easy. Life is complicated. Relationships are complicated, even the ones we have with ourselves and with our bodies. How many of us can actually say, I'm very satisfied with the way I look? And not just in this outfit or with this makeup and these earrings, but, like completely naked looking at myself in the mirror. How many of us have had those conversations with ourselves where we've said, I accept you as you are, with the skinny legs or with a thick waist or with a round face. And now that I have accepted you, we can work towards getting to where it's easier to say move or I'm sleeping better, so that you're starting from a place of acceptance as opposed to I'm going to go to the gym because I want to start accepting after, this is the body you're given. Yes, so and even the way we eat is, I saw this quote, looking at it as an opportunity to nourish yourself. And nourishing yourself doesn't mean you will not enjoy the sweet things or the salty and crispy things from time to time. It just means you'll always seek balance and you will always seek to do good because you're honoring yourself. And when we're doing it from a place of honoring as opposed to like fear of getting disease, because that also shaped me
It's an
for a while.
emotion.
I was afraid, I was terrified. The thought of developing type 2 diabetes terrified me because I had seen the needles. I had seen the wound that wouldn't heal. I had seen the amputation that followed. I had seen the kidney disease that progressed and eventually took the life of someone I loved. So there are very many of us who are driven by that fear. However, it's a thing I've also taught my clients to do is talk to that fear. This thing that you're really, really afraid of, instead of running from it, like sit and go like, okay, what are you really afraid of? That this will happen. Have you even seen tomorrow? So how do you know it will happen? Well, statistically, if I keep on this path, okay, so what can we do? If I don't want to turn out as a statistic and I know that these are the genes I've been dealt or these are the things that have happened to people who were on this path, what's the thing I can do today? This tiny little thing. And you don't have to go to the gym. I tell people you don't have to go to the gym. You can dance in your house. You have social anxiety and you start, just dance. Just you see that jam, that song that gets you move. And then now you associate moving your body with fun. And so you do more of it because you enjoy it. And then you're playing this music that you love, or you're cooking with someone you care about. You do meal prep with your bestie. Things that will get you back in the space so that you're also shifting how you think of things, and you're also inserting, like, sprinkling good memories and lots of grace also, good memories and grace. And I say grace because I've also had a complicated relationship with my body, but then the sitting down and talking to myself and go like, look, Sharon, what's this thing that you're really scared of? And kujita mkutano, calling yourself to a meeting and saying, where do I really want to be? And not just tomorrow, not just next year, oh, I want to lose 10 kilos so that I can, in 10 years, if I live to be as old as my great grandmother, who was 106, about there when she died. But like, if what are some of the things I will have appreciated doing now that future me? And there are times when I'll do something and I'm not enjoying this, lifting this
It's
weight.
like a push and a pull.
Exactly. And I'm like, I'm doing it because future Sharon will be glad. So there are things you do because future Sharon will be glad. Future Sharon will be glad if I do type those pages every other day. Yeah, so sometimes you do it like talk to your future self, and then it also gives you a reason to keep pushing. And some people do it for their kids. Like, I want my kids to see me fight for something I believe in. I want, to also just, I generally like it when you center it upon yourself, because like the kids could grow and leave, you know. And then the partner might not even notice, because if he didn't even notice that you did your hair. But like, if you do it for yourself because you live in your body and your body is your home every day, how much more empowering is that? Like, how much more powerful is that? Because then it doesn't shift with the mood of the people around you. It's a force from within.
I have nothing more to add. I could talk to you for hours, but thank you, because we are short for time. I'm going to say thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for
Thank you so
having
much
me.
for watching or listening. If you have any questions, please, I will link her
Socials, yes.
everything too, or you can just include them in the comment section. But for now, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for sharing so much. I've learned so much. I'm so grateful.
Glad.
And please, before you leave, if you're leaving, let's do this again to complete this discussion.
I feel like that would be a nice roundup, yes. Thank you
Yes.
for having me as well.
You're welcome. Until next time, guys. Bye.